Studies from Harvard and Duke universities have shown that the efficaciousness of prayer is identical to not praying. From a numbers standpoint, you're just as likely to have your prayer answered by, in fact, this rock than you are for Jesus, Allah, or Vishnu. All of the data we have for God points towards there being no God, which perfectly explains this next statistic, which is that your child is 3 times more likely to be assaulted in a church than even the second most common place, which ironically, 25% of them are designated as religious institutions. This data is provided by actual insurance companies paid by the same churches, which means companies are literally betting money that your child will be harmed in a church versus anywhere else. The numbers literally contradict Jesus's own words when he says, are not sparrows sold for a penny? Yet are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. So do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. Jesus's own words are a gamble. If you take that gamble, you will lose. Numbers do not lie, which is why insurance companies always post a profit and the house always wins. But today, you can test your luck playing Jackpot Jesus or go all in for Allah and make the odds look silly. The show starts now and the lines are open. We'll be waiting for you to prove that your God does in fact show up. I bit the dust reading Jesus' own words.
It's a sign, is what it is. It's a sign that he didn't want to be here, is what it was. Is that he could have helped. He could have shown up and he could have guided you through it. But in the end, he just wasn't around.
It was like, listen, I know there are 3 million babies dying of starvation, but this motherfucker over here misquoted me. We're going to take care of that.
Yep, that's what it's all about. Gosh.
Well, everyone, today is September the 7th, 2025, and I am joined by someone who needs absolutely no introduction, a baron of biology, a duke of DNA.
Oh, God.
Welcome, Forrest Valkai.
This is getting worse. Hey, everybody. I'm Forrest. Pleasure to be here.
Forrest, I am so glad to be on the screen with someone who can understand the biology because I'm not built for that. I'm built.
I feel the same way about the Bible, to be honest with you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm built for reading stuff, committing it to my memory, and regurgitating it at the right time.
You'd be surprised by just how much of biology is that. So, like, I think you'd be fine in my field, honestly. I feel the same way because I've read the Bible and I've got my highlighted to death copy over here. But like, there are certain things where like it's you really do. It helps so much to be able to quote the original Greek of this part and the original Hebrew of this part and the original Latin of that one, and understanding the connections and the ways everything goes together. I watch you and Dan McClellan and everybody else, and I'm blown away by like how deep these cuts go, where it's like, hey, not only is this just not what this person is claiming, is this not whatever Christian on the line is saying, but also there's about 30 different reasons why it's just something you shouldn't be taking seriously in the first place at all. Those things blow me away, and it strikes me the same way as when somebody calls me and says, there's a secret hidden code in DNA and that proves Jesus. It's like, no, I'm sorry. It is equally as ridiculous as when somebody calls you and tries to take the Bible out of context. So I'm stoked to death for this show. I'll be honest with you. We've already got some callers calling in, but hey, if you're out there and you think that we don't understand the Bible, or if you think that evolution isn't true, or if you think that the earth is 6,000 years old, or if you think that there's a reason to believe in some filthy blood sacrifice in Palestine 2,000 years ago that makes us now beholden to some monster in the sky, the number at the bottom of the screen there is 512-991-9242, or you can use the web link. Give us a call because we want to hear it. That's what the show is all about. They're running for I don't even know how many seasons, and we've yet to hear one good argument yet. So let's talk.
Yeah, I think we're on season 29, and it's interesting. If you've heard seasons 1, 2, and 3, you already know what's happening in season 29. It's like there's almost no good new arguments.
Yeah, that's what bothers me is like I grew up watching AXP. You know what I mean? I remember, about my old job. I was working at a science museum, and I would spend days. I had to sit there and solder together little motors for kids to build robots with, and that was like I spent days and days doing that at one point at this freaking job. And I would just sit there and just do this, and I'd have AXP in my head, and I would sit there for 8 hours a day just building motors, listening to AXP, and after like a year or two of doing that, I was like, I know two things. Number one, I've heard this exact same argument on today's episode 10 million times. I have never heard anyone do any better than this, and it sucked every time. And number two, I got to get on this show because I was like, it's crazy. And now here we are, hearing the same terrible arguments a decade later. It's rough, man. It's rough.
Well, we're going to get through it. Maybe it's today. Maybe it's today that the House loses and somebody brings in the argument that beats all the odds. And I mean, I'll see you in church in 7 days, maybe.
That's what I'm saying. All right. We have now learned this thing, and I guess I have some changes to make about my whole style. Still not worshiping the dude, but at least I'll be up here saying he's real. You've got that going on for you now,
Absolutely. Let's run our intro, and then we're going to get our first guest in. The Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government, one I'm particularly fond of. Do you have any callers in the queue that you think you might want to take first?
Let's talk to, I would say line 3, I disagree immediately with, but beyond that, it's up to you, my friend.
Sure. Let's grab line 3 then. Let's pull them in.
Yeah.
It looks like it's going to be, and I could be wrong, and it's not just maybe the best card game on the planet, but our new caller is Rook. How are you doing, Rook?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for being here. Can you flesh out your intro? I've got your intro as God existing isn't necessarily a bad thing, except when used for anti-science rhetoric. I think Forrest might have a few things to say about this.
Yes.
Is there anything more to that you want to add?
Yeah, I misspoke a little on the phone. What I was trying to say is that people believing that God exists it shouldn't, in a perfect world, shouldn't be an issue, but in the imperfect world, it can be used to push not just anti-science rhetoric, but just hateful, negative things, and to the detriment of humanity.
Okay. So, like, what do you mean perfect world in this case? Because I don't see a way in which believing in a God does not run an extreme risk of justifying hateful behavior, excusing willful ignorance, of leading to false beliefs. Like, I don't see a way in which that happens. So explain what you mean by perfect world.
Basically, the concept I'm trying to get at is that if half the population believes that God exists, but just like kept it to themselves, like they could have whatever beliefs they want, but they could just think in their head, oh, whatever, that person, I don't agree with what that person's doing, they're probably going to go burn in hell. Anyways, I'll continue with my day. That's like the perfect world where everyone just kind of minds their own business and doesn't push it on other people. But in our imperfect world, the natural, like, human instinct is to make everyone believe and follow you. And when people with dangerous beliefs get into power because enough people are following them, it can turn into just hate without it. It's not even connected to it's barely connected to their belief in God. Just they hate this group of people and are using religion to justify it and justifying doing horrible things.
Okay. So I see how that's the extreme. The issue that I'm having is that, like, even in the most benign sense, if you are holding a belief that you don't have real justification for, especially like, because everybody does. Everybody has little things that they play with themselves in their head about little things that they believe that they may not interrogate quite as well as they could potentially. Like, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has all these issues. But when you have something that's this extreme about the creator of the entire universe and the nature of like the entire reality that you live in, that's a much bigger thing to worry about. You know what I mean? So like, that's, for me, I don't know. I have a hard time with this idea that it's only a bad thing in the extreme case that somebody uses this to like force hateful behavior on people. I don't know about that.
Like, what I'm trying to get at is, if two people have the same beliefs, they can go believe together and do what they want. Even if they believed, I don't know, the earth is flat, and someone's saying, here, look at all this evidence the earth is flat. The people who just believe the earth is flat can go like listen to them and be happy and not push on other people. But the issue is that it's pushed on everybody when you broadcast it. So people who don't believe it get angry at those people, and people who do believe it get angry. That's the case. Getting angry.
That's the case about any belief about anything ever. If that's the way that we're using the term push on people, then like anytime anybody talks about anything, then that would be pushing something.
Not necessarily, because you could just say, hey, I believe in God, and then that's it. Like, I believe in God, and the other person could just say I don't, and that's the end of it. But that's not human nature. Human nature is to say, I believe in God. Why don't you believe in God? Well, I don't, because all the evidence, you're just being stupid believing in it. Well, I think you're stupid. There's so much evidence for this. And
okay, well, so is the issue that you're having is that some people are a little bit of an asshole? Like, is that? I fundamentally, maybe I'm missing this. I don't understand how this works, where you're saying that belief in God is a good thing as long as people are not necessarily a bad thing, as long as people aren't being jerks to each other about it. Like, I'm sorry, no, I think fundamentally the belief in God, even for the individual living in a vacuum, is going to be a hindrance on that person.
I totally agree that it will definitely be a hindrance on that person. What I'm trying to get at is that if everybody just kind of didn't yell at each other about it, that person could be hindered and be happy that they don't think they're being hindered, but they are, and they can go sit in a corner and be hindered and not care because they're happy and they get to believe what they believe. And
that's what you're calling a perfect world? That's what you were calling a perfect world, is a world where we don't care enough about each other to call out harmful beliefs?
No, a perfect world is people would believe what's actually evidence for, and what there actually is evidence for, and that they should be like kind or whatever, just the good beliefs. But people will inevitably have bad beliefs. So the only way to make that work is for them to just go believe what they believe instead of trying to force it on other people.
You just said the same thing in a circle. It would be best if people have true beliefs, but inevitably they won't. And so the best thing to happen is that they just believe whatever they believe and nobody stops them. And I disagree. I think the best world would be one where we can have these kinds of discussions and debates in a really productive, healthy way where, yes, there are emotions involved, but not necessarily letting those emotions get in the way of your reason. And yes, there's reason involved, but not necessarily letting super strict, crazy logic getting in the way of your humanity. And like, it's like, these are things that I think we're actually doing pretty well as a culture, is that we're able more and more to talk about these things and discuss these things. And yes, get angry about these things because these are emotionally charged topics. To have someone just want to go sit with their shitty beliefs is to not respect them enough to want to call them out and say, hey, this is a terrible thing you're believing here, and I love you enough to point out the fact that this is a hindrance to your life and your society. Because at the end of the day, those beliefs that they have are not stopping with them. Even if it was just hurting them, that would be bad enough, but it's not stopping with them. It changes the way they treat other people. It changes the way that they vote. It changes the way that they behave. It changes the way that they think about the world that they live in and how they're going to treat that world. Like, I'm sorry, I don't agree with you that a perfect world would be one in which people just shut up about whatever they believe.
Yeah, I use perfect world in a weird sense. I'm just going to clarify a little bit more. What I'm trying to say is that I'm sure you've had friends in your life where you've talked to them and religion just hasn't come up. And
Mhm.
and just somebody could just say, I'm in their head, say, I believe in God. I believe that the earth was created 6,000 years ago, whatever. And then you can believe that the earth was created billions of years ago. But as long as like they don't fight about it, basically, and as long as it doesn't affect their life, when it starts affecting things, then it's time to have like healthy conversations and good debates to try to fix the problems in the world. But on an individual basis in between people, if we could just like leave it alone, then everybody would be happy, and then the big issues we can work as a group to discuss.
I'm sorry, we're exactly where we have been this whole call. Justin, do you have anything else? Like I feel like we've made no progress here.
Yeah, I don't actually think it's possible to believe something and not have it taint your reality and the reality of those that are living among you, because we have to vote, we have to serve in government, we have to be on school boards, we have to make decisions for the well-being of our children, we have to make decisions for the well-being sometimes of other children, right? And all of these decisions are going to be informed based on a host of beliefs. One of those beliefs is like your belief in God. And I'll give you kind of an example. This is one of my favorite collections of books. This in English is referred to as a bibliography of prohibited books, but originally it was in Latin. It was a library from the Catholic Church of books that were entirely banned, sometimes just sections of books that were entirely banned because they were considered dangerous. These are dangerous ideas, right? And so when you have a large group of people that have a collective belief, then they can actually enact policies that are based on that belief. And sometimes the policy is harmless. Sometimes the policy is like, hey, we think it's bad for kids to fall into, go into a library and be able to get different pieces of literature that are meant for adults. I think we can all agree on that. Like there are certain protections as a society that we want to afford for other members in society, right? But if the majority of your government is part of a religious group, it's certainly true that they're going to make their list of protections different than if I wasn't religious. And then you can go even further. If you get like a government that is mixed religion and mixed government, meaning they have religious authority, then they can do truly horrific things. Like there's an edict that was issued in 1563 to basically just execute Anabaptists. These were Christians giving edicts to execute other Christians because they just didn't believe the religion the way that they wanted to. It says, if any minister of the Christian church is found guilty of having rebaptized anyone, he together with the person thus rebaptized, provided that the latter is proved to be of such of age as to understand the crime, shall be put to death. And so this is what happens when you have beliefs. You act on them. It's not possible to believe in something and not have it spill over into your life, into your family, into your government. That's why religion poisons everything.
Yeah. I actually, being on this call, I didn't prepare it really well because I thought I would have to wait in the whole thank you for taking it. But you honestly
it's a fair point. I understand what you're saying, though. Like you're saying, like, really, we don't have to view religion as something as inherently bad. And I can't say necessarily that I would view all of them as inherently bad, but we've seen from history that some of them should not be tolerated. They need to go. They need to disappear and go back to the Bronze Age.
Yeah. I honestly, I believe you. Like now, I just thought of a point, and it's good on a surface level, but digging any deeper like we did on this call, it ends up not working out. Thank you for taking my call, though. I'm very happy to have
I appreciate you bringing up an idea. It's fun to talk about. I appreciate you calling in and listening to us and hearing us out. It's been great.
Thanks, Rook.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Cheers.
A couple of things. Number one, to the person in chat talking about pronouns, call in. There absolutely is a need for that, and it is not obvious of whatever you're talking about, and I'd love to discuss it with you. Number two, much more importantly, at the beginning of everything you just said there, Justin, you totally said the word taint, and that was great. And also, other person in the chat who talked about me being borderline anti-Semitic. You should call in too. Let's talk about that. Would love to hear you defend that claim. Lines are open. Let's have some fun.
All right, we've got a theist in the queue. Before we grab our next caller, let me do our announcements. If you like what we do, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Giving to our Patreon ensures our ability to continue to produce the content that you love. You can find the Patreon at tiny.cc/PatreonAXP, tiny.cc/PatreonAXP. Another way that you can support us is by sending super chats. Get them in. We'll actually read them during the live stream and then post the live stream. And so it's a good way for you guys to participate in the conversation and support the channel. You can also become a member for as little as 99 cents a month. Click the join button below the video. I'm sorry, below this video. This will give access to special chat emojis, early access to YouTube shorts and clips, and more. Also, get AXP merch at tiny.cc/merchaca. You get t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, pint glasses, mugs, etc. And also, last but certainly not least, we want to send a big thank you to our crew who puts the show together every week. We've got video operators, audio operators, note takers, call screeners, and chat moderators, all helping to make this stream possible.
Look at Tina just on the phone slacking off. Shame on her. Jeez.
Or is she busy cooking someone right now? I don't know.
Right? She is our call screener. She's talking to someone on the line right now. But as far as I'm concerned, she's just completely wasting time. It's just like her.
Oh, man. Tina. Well, I think Simone is next. We've got a theist named Simone from United Kingdom, all the way across the pond. Says, proof of God. We are part of reality, so we exist. Our thoughts are part of reality, so they exist. We think God exists. What if we think is part of reality, then God as part of that reality exists? Those are certainly words. Welcome in.
At least it was a syllogism.
Those were words. Yeah.
Yep. Credit where it's due. Hello, Simone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello? Yeah, all right, okay, cool. All right. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you for calling in.
Simone, for at least my sake, can you lay out your argument in a straightforward, coherent fashion for the slow ones like me?
Yeah, so this is more like a thought I had, just to kind of my thought process is not necessarily to prove or disprove. It's more about trying to kind of get to the point where I understand what is true or not. And so I thought, say if we are part of, our reality, okay? So we know that we exist. Our thoughts, so what we think, they need to be part of the same reality. So they should exist as well. And if we think
so, can we pause there? Because I feel like this is going to be a really long, broken syllogism. Are you suggesting that thoughts exist in that, like, they have like some sort of metaphysical ontology the same way like I exist?
Not necessarily. I mean, our thoughts are part of what we think and what we are. So because we exist, then our thoughts exist as well, right?
Well, our thoughts are produced. Sorry, go ahead, Forrest.
Right. No, I this is going to sound like I'm being a jerk, and I am a little bit. I need to know, like, Simone, like, is this actually your reason for believing in a God? Or is this just a fun thought experiment about, like, if I imagine a 7-headed hippo dragon, then that technically exists because my thoughts technically exist? Like, is this actually a reason that anyone should believe in a God?
I don't know, actually.
Okay, I can imagine a creature that eats gods that ate your god. Does your god no longer exist because it's been eaten by my imaginary thought creature?
Possibly not.
Right, because that would be silly, right? Because thoughts are just thoughts. And while thoughts do exist in the reality that we live in because they're created by our brains, they are not real things that have like real impact on the world around us unless we produce that impact. They just stay in our brain. So again, I ask, like, do you actually believe in a god because you can imagine a god? Or do you have a different reason for believing in a god that you would actually use to justify belief in anything else ever?
Well, this is my question is, do I really believe in a God that exists? I don't have the answer for that.
You don't know if you believe a thing?
Yeah, you don't know what you believe? I'm lost now.
Kind of. I mean,
rough. That's real rough.
Well, I mean, we agree on one thing. Neither one of us know what you believe. Neither Forrest nor you.
I don't get the point, man. Like, let's if you don't know whether, like, it's okay to say you're agnostic, that you don't know if there is a God or not, but saying you don't know what you even think about the matter, that's a different claim entirely. So is that what you're trying to say, that you're agnostic to whether or not there is a God? Or are you saying you do believe that there is a God?
I would like to believe that there is a God, but I'm not convinced.
Okay. Why do you want to believe that there is a God?
Well, if let's assume if there is a heaven or a hell, I would rather go to heaven. So
okay. What if there's a different heaven and a different hell than the one that you believe in, and you go to the different hell? What if you believe in the Christian God and you go to the Muslim hell?
That is a good point.
What kind of a God would create a hell anyways? It's such an arbitrary invention. Like, I can certainly understand a God wanting to like segregate itself from somebody who is wicked. I certainly have no idea why God would want to light them on fire for all of eternity. That is entirely nonsensical. Also, how do spirits burn in fire?
True, but the thing is, between the two, if effectively there is a God, I would rather go to heaven than hell. Whether they do exist or not, I don't know, and nobody really knows.
I think we can all agree that we would rather not be lit on fire for eternity. I'm not sure there's much debate there. The question is whether or not it's even rational to be concerned about that. Why would anyone be concerned that there's some petulant sky daddy up there who's like so upset that you don't worship it that it's going to light you on fire for a trillion years? Why? How is that a sensible thing to believe in?
No, I mean, I understand what you're saying. It's just that from a Christian point of view, you know, in the foundation of Christianity, you know, you have that belief of heaven or hell. So, yeah.
So just to be clear, do you like in the Bible, like it talks about, it depends on which verse you read, but like it's pretty clear that like you don't have to just randomly believe, you also have to do the believey things and like be sincere about it and all those things. So if you believe that part of the Bible and you believe in God, then it doesn't matter. because you're not going to pull one over on the smartest being in the universe. You're not going to trick the most intelligent creature in existence into letting you into his theme park. And in a more rational sense, if we're really analyzing what kind of person this God is, because the question isn't just whether or not a God exists. If the God does exist, what God are we talking about? We're talking about the God of the Bible, the God of Islam, or the God of whatever these big monotheistic gods. This God isn't worth anything, or isn't worth worshiping, isn't worth aligning yourself with, isn't worth sacrificing your dignity and your humanity for. So why would you want to go to heaven? You're just doing this to avoid suffering. And that should tell you everything you need to know about this God, that this God would hurt you because you didn't think the right thoughts for a brief moment of time.
Okay. I mean, makes sense, yeah. Definitely makes sense.
Yeah. It sounds like you're just maybe a little bit afraid of hell, and that happens. I think a lot of us went through it. But the reality is, like, the more you think about the hell, the less sense it makes, and the less sense it makes, the less reason to be afraid of it. Once you've thought about it long enough and it becomes utterly ridiculous in your mind, like, being afraid of it just sounds equally as ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's not only about making sense of hell or heaven. It's just making sense of the whole Christian, philosophy and teachings, because I don't know if you remember, just, but I think it was like on the 29th that we spoke. I was on your show.
I recall.
And you gave me kind of food for thoughts, and I kind of done a bit of thinking, and then I kind of came out with this, if we are part of reality and we think, that God exists, then why is he not part of the same reality? And I'm just trying to to understand, and I think I'm kind of getting into that kind of deconstruction path, and I'm just curious, I just want to understand what I've been taught, since I was a kid up to now, why I have, questions, and why, I'm not so sure about, God, and, apart from Christianity, all the other, religions, I don't understand. There are so many things there that are not right, in religion, and I just want to understand why I'm so hung up on Christianity in a sense, but I'm going through a process of, probably understanding a bit more, but I still have questions, so.
Well, I think it takes time. As they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. It took me dang near 10 years to deconstruct to the point where I'm at. So like, it's a slow process. You're gonna slowly work through all the individual items, and eventually you'll probably come up with something that you feel is like something you can hold on to, something that you can say, okay, I've thought about it, and this is the thing that makes the most sense. And then you can move forward, right? So it sounds like you're near the beginning of your deconstruction. At the beginning of your deconstruction, you have way more questions than answers, and that's okay. Just go ahead and, do the work on the questions you have right now. And, when you work through them, we'll probably give you some more questions.
Yeah. Okay.
All
right. Simone, thanks for calling in. Good to hear from you again.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yep.
Take care.
Cheers.
Take care.
So yeah, I talked to Simone not that long ago, just recently, actually. Right. We do have quite a few people in the call. For anyone watching or calling in, just know we do prioritize theists and agnostics. We've got quite a few atheists. Not that we wouldn't love to talk to everybody, but we do have a time limit, and this is kind of a debate call-in show. So that's where our priorities are. With that being said, let me grab a couple of super chats, and then we're going to get our next caller. We've got one theist and one agnostic in the queue. Forrest, do you have a preference on which one we go to first?
I mean, definitely the agnostic, but like, I'm down to talk to the theist too. We'll get through it together like a family.
we certainly will. We've got a super chat from our friend Adam Brown. Great to see you, Adam. Adam says, glad to see you back. Missed Forrest at con. Those lines, though. Yeah, I'm at the con. Yeah. But had a great time and got to bring some COVID home with me. Happy cooking. Rock hard for Doug. I see if we didn't get the super chat on the screen, but it'll show up eventually. Don't worry. we can worry about those later. We got a super thanks from our friend Larry Beck. So much thank you back to you, Larry. There we go. Thank you, Larry. I appreciate the support. And you want to grab the next two for us, Forrest?
Yeah, let me grab the document there and I can see where they are. No, I don't, because I apparently don't have access to them at this point. I might have the wrong one open. This is my job.
That's how I figured out I was getting fired too. Don't worry.
Yeah.
What do you mean I can't log in? We got a $5 super chat from Woolite Mammoth. Says, Justin, you're looking more jacked. Keep it up, and may Doug give us strength to lift heavier and heavier stones. It's only by the power of Doug. Actually, now that the summer is over and my schedule is normalized, I'm actually back in the gym again with my good buddy. It is therapeutic. Of the many things you can do in your life that's therapeutic, aside from sleeping and drinking water and actually doing therapy, working out's good for you.
And then we also have Susan Robertson, who sent in $2 Canadian and 79 Canadian cents to say AXP is doing God's work. All hail mighty Odin. Turns out I did have the right document over. They just put those in a different tab now, and I'm very dumb and didn't review that before the show. And so that's kind of what's going on over here on this side.
No worries.
Again,
no worries. We're gonna
my actual job. Can't stress that enough.
We're going to grab our next caller, and it looks like it's Brisbane, an agnostic from Arizona. And Brisbane coming in asking, wondering about satanic atheism as a philosophy. Could you put some meat on the bone there, Brisbane?
It says it promotes a philosophy of self-indulgence and individualism and a rejection of altruism and hypocrisy as outlined in the Satanic Bible.
Is this not Chuck that I just talked to a week ago that shouted over top of me that human sacrifice is egregious to God? Weren't you a Christian last week?
Negative, sir. How dare you?
Well, okay. Well, anyways, Brisbane.
I'm serious.
Yeah. I do want to throw
hilarious.
out. Are you familiar when you talk about satanic atheism? It sounds like you're talking about the Satanic Temple, not like actual devil worship, which would then be a theistic thing, right? You're talking about the Satanic Temple, who are atheists who have like a set of belief and a code that they then registered as a religion that they can then, influence public policy like a religion can. Is that what we're talking about?
I'm talking about the AI overview that says it promotes a philosophy of self-indulgence.
Okay, so just so we're clear, there actually are real human beings, not robots trying their best with what they pulled off of Reddit, that actually laid out their beliefs. And what I've got here is the actual Satanic Temple website, who have their 7 fundamental tenets that they've laid out. And you tell me which ones you disagree with. Number 1, we have one should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. Brisbane, do you agree or disagree with that tenet?
No. What about cockroaches? That's all creatures, it just said. Hell no.
So you don't agree that we should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures according to reason. You don't think that that's right?
No, I'll kill a cockroach real quick. Done. Next.
Okay. So let's try another one. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions.
Well, it depends on your definition of what justice is.
That sounds like a lazy cop-out to me, but we'll keep going. One's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. Do you believe in bodily autonomy, Brisbane?
Wait, now I'm still confused about this. Okay, all right, go ahead. Say it again.
Sure. This one is about bodily autonomy. It reads, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. Do you agree with that one?
I would say someone of their full cognition. You know, I'd say John Stuart Mill on Liberty outlines it a lot better than that, but that's a ripoff of that. Okay, go ahead.
So that was really not a yes or a no about whether you agree with bodily autonomy, but it's about what I would expect from the call so far.
It's a ripoff of John Stuart Mill. It was written like 1670s. Okay, he ripped
Still haven't said whether or not you agree with it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There you go.
Also,
The freedoms, this is number 4, the freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own.
to willfully offend, I'd say, like, if you take criminal law, fighting words like certain words that start with N and end with ER, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you provoke someone, then, there's sometimes justifiable kind of things that happen there. And
What you're talking about are repercussions. Yeah. This is talking about actually restricting freedom. There's a major difference there.
If it's fighting words like that, or you're disparaging any particular group in a prejudiced way, then yes, you are the problem, and they have laws for stuff like that.
Okay, so we're have an in-depth discussion on freedom of speech there. Number 5, beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care to never distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. Do you agree with that one?
Confirmation bias. Yeah. Hey, look, I could cover all this with one here. Do whatever you will as long as you don't infringe on others' freedoms and liberties in the course of your actions. Done. Covers rape, murder, molestation, you name it. I'm done with 1. We don't need all these 7. And furthermore,
that's covered. That's covered by number 3, and it does nothing to address the fundamental thought principles that are also covered, like example in the one that I just read about scientific understanding and how you should conform your beliefs to scientific understanding, not the other way around. It's wild that I'm explaining this and you are still just yelling, and at no point have we actually said anything even close to the AI overview that you thought was a serious declaration of faith and called in to be a laughing asshole about.
Can you explain fundamental thought processes or whatever you're talking about?
Can you stay on topic?
Please.
I literally did a minute ago before you switched topics to something else.
You just said it. You said that, but you didn't explain. Please define that, if you will. Fundamental thought processes.
I didn't say fundamental thought processes. I said, like, the way that these folks are laying out the structure of thought and scientific thinking and how that's important, as opposed to just saying, do whatever you want. And so what I'm just trying to get at here, because it's very clear that like 7 new thoughts was a bit too much for you. But at the end of the day, all I'm trying to do is show you that the AI overview that you came in here shouting about isn't accurate or useful. And if you actually take the time to learn about other people's beliefs, you might be impressed by what you find. Maybe they actually have something to go off of here. Maybe they actually have something interesting to say. You're still just yelling, so I don't expect that you would take the time for that. But if you tried, you might learn a new thing, and that'd be a lot of fun.
They need to get their programming right on the algorithm.
No, you need to learn not to trust AI overviews, because that's a dumb thing to do. Their programming on their website is completely concise. You read an AI overview and thought that it was reality. That's a you problem, not a them problem.
I had read the 7 tenets. They were hack philosophy from the 60s dude that didn't even get it right. He didn't even have the haircut right.
So you did read the 7 tenets, and then instead of remembering that, you just read an AI overview and called to make fun of people about something that they don't actually believe?
So, does it not provoke self-indulgence? That's what you're saying? You're going against?
No, it doesn't at all.
Okay. Well, we'll have to get this AI corrected, and they'll fix it probably. You know.
Or, again, can't stress this enough, you have control of your own brain, and so you could just choose to not trust an obviously fucked up AI overview, especially considering the fact that it has been consistently proven to be fraudulent and to be faulty over and over and over again. You could take responsibility for yourself instead of complaining about the AI.
I'm trying to, do you adhere to the Satanic Bible then? So that's what it is. So you adhere to that then, right?
No, I'm not a Satanist. I don't disagree with their tenets, but I'm not a practicing member of this church.
It seems like you're very kind of fervent for the movement.
I literally just read what they wrote on a website because you couldn't be bothered to do that.
And you just happen to agree with everything it said, you know, disparaging people and ripping off John Stuart Mill's on liberty with that bullshit and everything.
Can you tell me one part of that I specifically said that I agree with everything that this says?
You're defending this religion, and it is one, just so you know. Dogma is as dogma does. Bible followers lobby Congress, just like Christians. They have special interest groups. So,
it's pretty clear that you have a problem with paying attention, because remember at the beginning when I did say that this was a registered religion? You're not making any points here. That's part of the reason why I don't join.
Done with you.
So it sounds like you're having an argument with your soap bottles in the shower and you're putting it now on the show, trying to have it with me. Sorry, this shit doesn't work the way that it does in your head. And it appears that was a bit too much, because now he's hung up. He tried to say words. It's things like that. Like we talk about this a lot, but we have a real problem on these shows with what we call Poe's law. And Poe's law is this idea, it's this old internet tenet that it's without context, without any like disclaimer, it's impossible to know if somebody is just trolling and is just saying dumb shit to say dumb shit, or if they're sincere in how ridiculous they're being. And I think that was a great example of it. It's really hard to tell if that dude really thought that he was cooking because he read an AI overview about something and was going to shock us all about the revelation that the religion was a religion. Who knew? But at the end of the day, if you just listen, if you want to know what somebody believes, listen to what they say. They literally have a website they published on their own with all their beliefs right there. Anybody can read it, and it'd be real easy. And if you don't believe those things, if you don't accept those things, you know what you do? You don't join. Easy squeezy. As for me, definitely like number one, acting with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. Definitely. Number two, struggle for justice is ongoing and should be a necessary pursuit as a prevail over all laws. Definitely. One's body is inviolable. Definitely. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to defend, to offend. Absolutely. I think that there's a really interesting discussion to be had there, but overall, fundamentally, totally. Beliefs should conform to scientific understanding of the world. 100%. Number 6 that we didn't get to, people are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do their best to rectify it and resolve any harm that may have been caused. I don't see how anyone could disagree with that. And finally, number 7, every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. So that whole bullshit rant at the end there that dogma is as dogma does, They have a thing about that in there about how this shouldn't be taken as dogma. You'd know that if you bothered to actually read the fucking website instead of an AI overview, letting some fucking bot do your thinking for you. Try thinking for yourself. It's a lot of fun. It's interesting. It makes you a better person. What a time. For those who are asking, yes, Justin is dead. And so for that reason, I'm going to move on to the next call myself. Welcome to the Forrest Show. It's Forrest and only Forrest. Damn, the next call is just for Justin. So I guess in the meantime, we'll talk to, who are we going to talk to? Screw it. Let's talk to Robert, who is calling in for Justin. Hopefully Justin will be back very quickly. But I'm going to talk to Robert for a second until Justin gets here. Robert, call in from Georgia, pronouns he, him. Hello, you're on AXP with Forrest and only Forrest. How are you today, Robert?
Yes, fine, Forrest. Thank you.
Right on. So I would love to know what you're calling about. Justin will hopefully rise from the dead like Jesus in just a couple of seconds. But in the meantime, you've got me, and I would love to talk for just a second about some other stuff.
All right, right on.
So what exactly were you calling about as far as these two prophecies? Because what it says here in the chat is that the call screen is that you're ready to roast Justin on Jesus fulfilling at least two prophecies. What prophecies are we talking about?
Well, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like Jesus fulfilled any prophecies?
So I'm not in any way a Bible expert or scholar, but I can tell you that the prophecies that I know of, no, that a lot of it is like it said something in the Old Testament and then said the prophecy was fulfilled in the New Testament. And there are even a couple of situations in which like it's very clear that the New Testament was like kind of massaged and force fit into this Old Testament prophecy. Like, for example, Jesus in the Old Testament is called Emmanuel, I believe. And so you have this idea of this guy named Emmanuel, who's going to be this Messiah figure that comes out of wherever and does it. And you have then suddenly, I think it's John, I don't remember one of the Gospels, Justin will know when he gets back, where it's kind of like just clearly force fitting. Like they were talking about this guy, Emmanuel actually means Jesus. They just didn't know it at the time. So like things like that. Kind of, but beyond that, as far as actual prophecies of Jesus himself, I certainly wouldn't want to call myself an expert on any of that.
Right on. Well, do you have any way to pull up Habakkuk 2, chapter 2?
I don't know what that is. I can ask you also, like while we're waiting on Justin to resurrect, there's Justin. He's back right there, and my God, he looks so different.
I've done exactly what Jesus did, and I was resurrected and unrecognizable to any of my followers.
That's what it is.
I'm Justin.
I do want to add, like, while we're here, Robert, while we're waiting on Justin to get back, because I don't want to steal his thunder and pull up these prophecies that you're saying you want to roast him on. Like, maybe we can focus on some other parts of the Bible, like the resurrection story, for example. Do you agree that the resurrection story in the Bible is totally unreliable, or do you think that the resurrection story makes sense?
Well, it definitely makes sense as far as that's what all the surrounding cultures had through history before Jesus, and they kept saying that was going to happen, and then it actually happened.
Just happened to happen with other gods and things like that. And then here in the Bible, you get 4 different resurrection stories. What about like the beginning of the Bible, like the creation of the world? Do you think that the Genesis account is real? I'm just trying to find something interesting to talk to you about is all.
Right on. Well, my thing is I could never become an atheist. Just being real with you, you want honest people and honest thoughts. And when I find out of different things that are going on, how could I deny the reality that we're living? And it's so put together, our minds, our bodies, creation. I'm getting ready for hunting season and just seeing how beautiful everything's put together, knowing all the hurt that's in this world and all. But I could never deny now a creator. whether it's the Islam God or the other God, any God you want, man-made God, but I could never deny a creator or master programmer or designer. Something had to do something with this.
What gets you to a creator? What gets you there, Rob? Because you said you can't deny one, but what are the steps that get you from seeing all this we've got around us to that creator? There must be a series of steps that gets you thinking and those thought processes. Take us through those thought processes.
All right. The thought process that I would come to is love and hate. And there's a distinction between good and evil, and you can choose it. It said, you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. So just our human experience down here for the little bit of time that we are, I just believe that there's definitely something going on that you can experience it and have the integrity to want to do one or the other. Because some people are just hell-bent on being evil, and I don't understand it, and that's the way it is. But
let me ask you then, there, Robert. Do you believe that this, whatever this creator is, whatever it might look like, do you believe that it is in some sort of control of this universe?
That is really hard to say at the moment, because it seems like he just spun it up and walked away from it and let us figure it out. As far as getting help, supernatural help, I believe he's a supernatural God, but he's supernaturally spun it all up, and now we're here to experience it, and we have natural law, and we just go by it, and it don't look like he intervenes.
You talked about when you talked about you have to believe there's a creator, you didn't just mention the universe existing. You were sure to say that, like, there's all this suffering and all this different stuff going on all over the place. It sounded to me like you were saying there's somebody at the controls. There's some reason for all of this stuff. Now it sounds like you're taking a more deistic approach, that this God just farted the universe into existence and pieced out, and all of the pain and suffering and everything that we see around us is just a natural, unexplainable phenomena that has no real meaning. Is it one or the other?
It's definitely, there's a meaning. That's what I'm saying. It's hard to say that you would go through this life and learn all the things that we're learning for no reason, for just a waste. I don't believe that it's a waste. I believe that there is something to it all. And karma is a big thing, how you treat others, and it's important. I think we can make this place a better place.
So you're making a lot of claims that I agree with, and then a lot of claims that I don't agree with. The idea that we can, we try to treat others better, I agree with that. The idea that there's some karmic balance that is in play here, I don't agree with, right? And so this is the issue I'm having, is it sounds like you're just saying a lot of truisms, like, hey, life is hard and life is crazy and we need to try to make the world a better place. And like, sure, cool, all that. And then you're tacking on, and therefore there's some fucking wizard that made this place this way on purpose. And I don't get the connection there. How are you building that bridge from one to the other?
Because I don't get the connection how you could look at the human anatomy and the eyeballs and our minds, and being an electrician, knowing how the body works and nature and everything, and deny that there's a creator. I mean, that breaks the thermodynamics.
No, it doesn't.
Energy can't be destroyed and it can't be created. So your Big Bang Theory don't make sense. Someone had to create it.
So, Robert, you've said now, like, just in that sentence there, several things that make zero sense. Just to be clear, I have studied anatomy, and I have studied how the body is, how it works and how the different nerves go, like an electrician, and how the eyeball works. I've studied all those things, and I know what the Big Bang is, and I know what the first law of thermodynamics is. None of these things work the way that you say they do. So to answer your question, you said you don't understand how I can see all these things and not believe in a God. It's because I actually took the time to study these things. And the cool thing about anatomy is that it wholesale, 100% front to back, points towards evolution. There's no part of your anatomy that points towards any kind of divine, intelligent creator, anything like that. When we talk about the first law of thermodynamics, absolutely not violated by the Big Bang. That isn't how that works. Nor, and you didn't say this, but the most common thing is that nor is evolution violating the second law of thermodynamics. That's simply not the case. So the way that I'm able to not believe in a God while understanding these things is that I actually took the time to really understand them. I'd be happy to keep talking to you, Robert, but Justin is back if you want to talk to him about these prophecies. Or I'm happy to keep talking to you about science. It's whatever.
Yeah, I apologize. My power flickered where I live, and all my equipment had to restart itself. But I listen. You had me at prophecies. I'm all ears.
Well, okay, right on. Justin, do you have any way to pull up Habakkuk 2? Because you said Jesus didn't fulfill any prophecies. In Habakkuk 2, there's quite a few prophecies that he absolutely did fulfill.
Sure. Are they messianic?
It's definitely future. It's talking about future. The whole chapter of Habakkuk 2 starts out with saying run because it will happen.
Well, yeah. So the Zephaniah. Zephaniah says a whole bunch of stuff that's going to happen at the day of the Lord, which is imminently near, and then none of it came true. So what part of Habakkuk 2 came true?
Well, it says that the just shall live by his faith. How many people do you know today that they say the just shall live by his faith? And it says the just shall live by his faith.
Well, it says the righteous, the same thing. Righteous will live by faith, but this was already true of Abraham. This is not a messianic prophecy, and it certainly wasn't anything about Jesus.
So he didn't do any of those things all through chapter 2. I don't know if you're pulling it up on the screen or you're looking at it. I could pull my Bible out and start hitting all the things that there's nobody else like Zechariah 13:6. That's just one scripture instead of a whole Habakkuk 2, the whole chapter. But what about Zechariah 13:6 and 5?
What about it?
It says, "What are these holes in your hands from your friends I received from the friends of my house?"
Yeah. Do you know what that passage is actually about? Because I don't think you do. That passage is talking about a future person who is trying to hide the fact that they are a prophet, because it's saying at this time period that prophecies and prophets will cease, and even those who were prophets will basically be hiding themselves. So this is the problem that you're going to have, is you're approaching the text and you're saying, here's one or two words. It just sounds like Jesus. I saw the word hole in the hand. It must be about Jesus, right? But you're ignoring the entire context of the actual passage. Like, you can't just pick out 2 or 3 words in an entire passage and claim that it's about Jesus.
All right. Well, I really thought I was going to roast you on these two, especially Habakkuk 2, because there's not too many people in history that can line up to Habakkuk 2 if you read it. And
I've read it.
Points out. Right. Okay.
Yeah. You want to hear like a real messianic prophecy?
Sure.
Yeah. Jeremiah 33. Let me know when you get your Bible ready. Jeremiah 33 says, "The days are surely coming, says the Lord, when I will fulfill the promise I made to the house of Israel and the house of Judah. In those days and at that time, I will cause a righteous branch to spring up for David, and he shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. In those days, Judah will be saved and Jerusalem will live in safety." This is a king who physically rescues his people. And it says, "For thus saith the Lord, David shall never lack a man to sit on the throne of the house of Israel, and the Levitical priest shall never lack a man in my presence to offer burnt offerings, to make grain offerings, and to make sacrifices forever." So in the Messianic age, according to the Bible, there will be a king on a literal throne, and there will be actual Levitical priests giving real, actual sacrifices by fire in the temple. So that means the New Testament's entirely false.
You know, it's hard for us to choke this stuff down sometimes when you try to think about what it's saying.
I know. I get it. It was hard for me too when I was first encountering the Old Testament.
We haven't thought it through, and then here's another prophecy, and then that gets shot down, and I'm trying to find the right prophecy, and I really thought I had you smoked on this one.
Yeah, I know. Well, go back and find another one and come back when you find another one that you think you got. I'll give you one prophecy that Jesus did fulfill if you want.
You're going to agree that he did fulfill one?
Only one. I don't think you're going to like it.
Sure.
Deuteronomy 13, if prophets or those who divine by dreams appear among you and show you omens or portents, and the omens or the portents declared by them take place, and they say, let us follow other gods whom you have not known, let us serve them, you must not heed the words of those prophets or those who divine by dreams, for the Lord your God is testing you to know whether indeed you love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. The Lord your God you shall follow, alone him you shall fear, his commandments you shall keep, his voice you shall obey, and him you shall serve and hold fast to. But those prophets who divine by dreams shall be put to death.
I'm not going to crash out on you. I know you just don't understand the Trinity and virgin birth and all the stuff that we think. You just don't understand it. So
that's what it is.
Argue it with.
That's so rough, Robert. That's so rough that this dude who actually has expertise in this area just actually explained some shit that you didn't know, and you're instead of even trying to grapple with it, you're just gonna, you just don't get it, yo. You just don't understand this stuff that you used to believe in, that you used to do for a living. That's so lame.
Well, Robert, come back next time, and I promise we'll have a full dialogue on the Trinity, okay?
And call me if you ever want to talk about anatomy or the Big Bang. I would be happy, because that's before you came back, Justin. That's what Robert was saying, was that, you know, if you look at anatomy and you look at how nerves are wired and you look at the human eye, it all very clearly points to God, and the Big Bang violates the first law of thermodynamics. Absolutely 0% of which is true. And as someone who has actually studied these things, I've studied anatomy at a graduate level. I can really go into it with you, and we can talk about evolution out of this, really dig into it. And we can show how none of this is divine. None of this is necessary of a God. None of this is indicative of a God. None of that. We're here for you, but it would be really cool if you could actually grapple with what we're saying, rather than just telling us that we don't understand some esoteric shit from whatever other thing you believe in.
Justin,
that blows.
Justin, he's just trying to explain to you that I got roasted twice. I got roasted before you got here, and then I got roasted out. Y'all have a good evening.
All right. Thanks for calling in, Robert.
Take care, Robert. I didn't even roast him. I didn't think. I really, he just said some stuff, and I was like, hey, nuh-uh, though, is the thing. That's not how that works. And he just kind of dropped it. I appreciate, like, if you get caught in something that you drop it, but, like, honestly, I would rather Robert would have asked some questions, because it sounds like he's just believing whatever anybody with any kind of authority is saying. The way he brought up the whole thing about the eye and the Big Bang and these prophecies and stuff. I've never heard of Chewbacca 2, but the way he said that, like, it sounds like he heard some preacher say this, and so he brought it up to you. He's like, "Hey, what about Hitachi 2?" And you're like, "Sorry, that's not what that is." And it was the same thing for me. It was just like, well, what about, the Big Bang? That violates the first law of thermodynamics. That's entirely out the window. And that's just something you heard Kent Hovind say. I'm sorry, like, that's not how that works. And if you just grappled with it the first time you heard it, or if you grappled with us refuting it, you would actually then be learning something instead of just believing what somebody told you. I hope Robert calls back and we can have a serious discussion. I don't want him just to be discouraged. I want him to try.
I suspect he will. He's called quite a few times already. We've got a couple people in the queue. I'm intrigued. Well, let's grab a couple super chats, and we've got, and this is rare, but we've got a Hindu theist waiting to get in, and I'm most intrigued to hear about this. But let's grab some super chats. Our friend Carlos is with us tonight. Carlos, thank you so much for the 300 MX. Carlos says, what a killer combo, Forrest and Justin. Saludos. Hey, thank you so much, Carlos. Great to see you tonight.
Thank you for the Midgard xylophones. I don't know. That's so stupid. We also got Psychological Projectionist sending 5 monarchy bucks, who says, as love normally means extreme preference, does all loving, i.e. lack of preference, actually mean the same as all indifferent, as in meaningless? I like to think of it like, disinterested. You know what I mean? You just don't have any preference in any way. Yeah, it's yeah, for sure.
And five from our friend Simone. Simone says, thanks,
Hey.
guys, for taking my call. I really appreciate your help. By the way, I think the caller after me was drunk as a camel, and I could not agree more. If he wasn't drunk as a skunk, I'd hate to see him like when he was. It can't be good.
That was rough. And like, I can't stress enough, if you're like, if you get nothing else from this show, people out there watching, don't just trust the AI overview. Don't do it. Like, it's a terrible mistake. Do you remember when Google first rolled that out and there were like screenshots going around of like, how do I deal with depression? And the AI overview is like, you should try jumping off a bridge. And it's like, and that was, or like, it's healthy to eat 5 to 10 rocks per day. And shit, like, it just says shit. It just scours the internet for things that look, it's a search engine. Yeah. It does the exact same crawl that it does with a search, mainly from Reddit. And it just pulls bullshit and puts it into a semi-coherent sentence. It's not real, and it's not reliable, and it's not trustworthy, and it's not accurate. It is a robot mimicking human thought. You need to think for yourself. Please do it. Googling was already the easy way. I just want to be clear. If you have believed this long that taking the time to Google something was labor, woof. But like, that's it's now taking the stat and making it even dumber. Just please try reading. Oh, $2 from Woolite Mammoth. Justin just underwent a transfiguration. Absolutely.
Indeed. And $20 from our friend Nobody on Fire, Big W Nobody, with a quotation of real scripture from Quartzian 4:20-69. The forest is grounded upon Doug. Doug biogenesis was the spark that brought all. We build our fire upon rocks. The rocks boil and purify the water of life. Never hazardously fill one's bro. Rock hard for Doug. Absolutely. Always remember, stay rock hard for Doug and sinfully wet for Sharon. Let's grab our... if you know, you know.
I love that every like atheist commentator has like their own silly ass deity thing, and they all are just loaded with inside jokes, and they're all just grotesquely sexual, and it's great.
They have to be.
It's great.
They have to be. It shows the nonsensicalness of presuppositional apologetics. Like when I could do the same presup for a pet rock that you can do for your God, it shows you just how silly it is.
Yep. Man.
Well, we got our friend from India, who as far as I can tell, is a member of the Hindu faith, says consciousness and Vedic concept of God, and then no question or actual proposition. Can you put some meat on the bone as to what you're referring to? Are you suggesting that consciousness somehow proves that gods exist?
Hi, Justin and Forrest. Thanks for accepting my call. First of all,
thank you for calling in.
I have no aversion. Or hatred towards atheists or anything, because as per the Hindu worldview, even atheists are welcome to be Hindus. They can be Hindu atheists as well. But that being said, I saw that you guys are talking about compatibility of science and God, right? I would say that the Vedic model of God, the Vedic worldview of what God is and what is the relationship between God and creation and so on, is actually compatible with science. To begin, I would like to give you what the Vedic model of God is. Is that something you guys are interested in?
Yes. Before you do, can you please tell us what is your name really quick?
I would like to be called a Hindu.
Okay, that's fine. I wasn't sure because I see you call in the web caller, and so sometimes things get mixed around. So I wasn't sure if the word Hindu got put into your name accidentally or if that's what you prefer. So we'll call you Hindu for the rest of the call. That's fine.
Yeah, so like I don't know much about the Vedic model, but my understanding is that the Vedic model has multiple deities. Is that correct?
The Vedic model, in the ultimate sense of reality, has only one God, which is called Brahman. The many deities or manifestations of that one is actually you see as those different names and forms and functions sort of like personifications or manifestations of that one.
So it's like a modalist view where there's one supreme God, but it can manifest in multiple ways.
Kind of. It's more, I will say, it's a panentheistic worldview, panentheism.
Like pantheism. Okay. All right. So, like in your worldview, then, or in your opinion, what would be like a good argument for why this would be the case, that this God or this reality exists?
Yes. So I kind of like following this debate about whether consciousness originates from the brain or whether it is actually an ultimate reality of the universe and so on. So from what I could gather so far is neuroscientists, neurobiologists, whatever you want to call, failed to prove that consciousness emerges from the brain. Even if you look at the debates going on between philosophers, mainly the philosophers who are non-materialist, non-physicalism philosophers, they claim that you cannot prove consciousness emerges from the brain, whereas the ones who are materialists, the neurobiologists, they say, we can definitely prove consciousness emerges from the brain. But as we've seen so far in this debate, that the neurobiologists have failed to prove that consciousness emerges from the brain. And even in physics, I see what is emerging is sort of this idea that space-time paradigm is itself flawed. And they said we have something deeper than space-time paradigm, and maybe most probably the space-time paradigm is evolving or a manifestation of an ultimate reality, which according to some scientists, philosophers, such as Donald Hoffman, such as Bernardo Kastroff, I think. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing their name. According to them, consciousness is the ultimate reality. And as per the Vedic concept of God, the God that we believe in, the main one God, Brahman, aka Brahman, is consciousness. It's a pure consciousness. So in this worldview, in this framework, science and our concept of God is very much compatible.
Right. So Hindu, I guess what I'm trying to figure out though is if you and I have like a roughly comparable model of consciousness, except my consciousness doesn't include your God, my model of consciousness just includes the brain, what would be the factor that would lead me to add in like the Hindu God or gods or manifestations into the equation?
So can you please rephrase the question?
Yeah. I mean, so what I'm saying is, like in my worldview, consciousness is derived from the brain. You're saying that consciousness somehow exists outside of the brain. So what I'm trying to figure out is what would be the evidence that would lead me as a person to believe that consciousness derives from outside of the brain, like some source, like the Vedic source?
Not necessarily Vedic source. It's like Vedas are essentially like Veda translates to knowledge. So it's not exclusive source, for example. It's just one way to say what is actually it is, And for respectful, I need to see where science already has come to the conclusion that consciousness emerges from the brain. Because so far in academia, what I have followed is there is no proof that consciousness emerges from the brain. Even neurobiologists are failing to prove that consciousness emerges from the brain. And the thing is, I'm not that eloquent to put you guys how consciousness leads to all that we see. But as per the Vedic concept, the separateness, the multiplicity that we see in creation, I mean, that's the wrong word. Creation is the wrong word. I cannot say creation, creator, but actually the idea is the Brahman, the one consciousness, it manifests.
Do you think that our consciousness is how we get our personalities?
So consciousness is like the and everything.
Like when my body dies, will I still have the same personality?
No, because personality is ingrained to the mind.
That's right. Okay. So if consciousness is a source of like our characteristics and our personality and things like that, it's really weird that we can drastically alter our personal characteristics, by either modifying the brain or modifying chemicals going to the brain. Like, for example, someone who's like really angry and aggressive can get a prescription that makes them not angry and aggressive. This is a really weird thing if consciousness is outside of the brain. If consciousness is outside of the brain, we would expect that whatever traits and behaviors that your consciousness has, it would just be transposed to the brain, nothing more. But it's actually the opposite. When we tinker with the brain, the parts of our consciousness that we would say is immaterial or outside of the brain changes, right? So I just don't think the model that consciousness is like the driver of the brain rather than the brain the driver of consciousness works.
Personality, the brain, everything is just an emergent phenomenon, a manifestation of the underlying supreme reality, which is the consciousness, like irreducibly.
No, you can say that, but saying that is just restating the conclusion. I'm asking for evidence that would lead to that conclusion, because we've done quite a bit of studies, and all of the studies I'm aware of would demonstrate that consciousness would necessarily be a derivative of the brain, not the other way around, which is why, like, if you do read the Roger Sperry split brain experiments, right, where they split people's hemispheres in half, and then what do? The people's consciousness starts to have internal struggles. For example, there was a guy, after he had his brain split, needed to relearn how to do basic tasks like put on his clothes, get dressed, button his shirt. And it turned out that like it was very difficult to just do something like button a shirt, because he couldn't coordinate, even though he intended to, he wanted to, he couldn't actually coordinate the motor skills with both of his hands at once. He said one hand would come up to button the shirt while the other one was going behind it, unbuttoning the shirt, right? This would be completely unexpected if consciousness and decision-making and all that nonsense was happening in some sort of immaterial presence that just happened to inhabit the brain. But I just don't see why I would look at any of the data points we have and interpret it as some sort of external factor influencing the brain.
What the example that you gave is talking about something which is not necessarily consciousness. The motor skills are all like, these are all related to the brain. And the brain in this model of consciousness is sort of like a receiver. So consciousness, just to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about, consciousness is pure awareness. That's what I'm talking about. So that's the
right, but I'm still
that I'm using.
I'm still waiting for some type of evidence that would lead us to believe that consciousness is acting on the brain, not the other way around.
What do you mean by consciousness is acting on the brain?
Okay. So you just keep restating your belief, and that's not an argument. You can't just keep restating your conclusion. You need to support your conclusion with some sort of evidence or fact, right? So like when I was a freshman in high school, we had to learn how to write essays. As you're not in junior high anymore, you're in high school, you have to write good essays. And it said, start with your conclusion, do your research, and then fill in your supporting paragraphs. So you already have your conclusion. I need you to fill in the supporting paragraphs. What are the information that you can put down to support your conclusion that consciousness exists outside of the brain?
First, I need to know what your definition of consciousness is to move forward.
It's your definition. My definition's yours. Sorry, Forrest.
Yeah. No. I was going to say the exact same thing. You defined it as awareness a minute ago. Can you, even if take even brain out of it, can you give me one example at all of something being aware that is not made of matter? Awareness outside of matter. Does that exist?
Self-awareness cannot exist, but because the brain is like a receiver, it channels into that and it becomes aware of it then.
So here's the issue I'm having is that, and this is, what the problem I'm having with hearing this is that you started this call by saying that, like, neuroscientists and whatnot, they say that consciousness comes from the brain. but they can't back that up. That's just this thing they're saying. And then you also have over here the idealists, people like you, who are saying that consciousness, awareness, whatever, exists fundamentally, and then brains are able to tap into this. It's like an antenna, like a receiver, like whatever. The issue that I'm having is that from my standpoint, right, as a materialist, as a biologist, as someone who's studied neuroscience, or just any level of this, if I'm looking at it from the idea that matter comes first and consciousness comes later, I can identify several steps to get to where consciousness is, and I have evidence for every single one of those steps. Most importantly, I have direct evidence to say that if I change this matter, then consciousness also changes, right? We have countless examples of, somebody's brain changes and their consciousness changes, their awareness changes, their personality changes. Justin touched on this just a moment ago. On the other side of the coin, if we start from the idealist standpoint and say that consciousness exists first, literally all we have is that statement. You have the presupposition that consciousness is first and then the brain's there. What actual experiments, what steps, what evidence do you have between the conclusion and the conclusion? All I'm hearing over and over is just the statement that the consciousness is out there and everything else taps into it. From the materialist side, I have a tremendous amount of identifiable steps and evidence for every single one of them. Where are you? Where all I'm hearing is just the presupposition. So what else do you have?
First of all, consciousness doesn't change with the change of brain. The consciousness that I'm defining is awareness. So you are aware that you are someone else, but you are still aware. So that is still there. So consciousness is not changing.
I would argue awareness can also change with changes in the brain, but go on.
Oh, second, can we talk about the concept of observer effect, quantum mechanics and observer effect?
Oh boy.
I bet you it isn't what you say it is.
This is not going to go well.
Can you tell me what you think that is?
So I'm happy to, but just before we get there, really quick, do you have any training in quantum physics?
No.
Okay. I don't either. I'm a biologist. I have general physics training at an undergraduate level. Justin, do you have any training in physics at all, especially quantum physics?
No, I went to school for electrical engineering and to learn fairy tales from the Bible.
Okay, so we have 3 non-physicists here on the call. Is there anything that we can talk about? Because I'm happy to do it, but is there any discussion that can be had between the 3 of us that will actually elucidate whether or not this makes sense? Because I don't think there is. What do you think?
Okay, so let's think about this. Okay, let's think about our dreams, our dream world. Okay,
so we're moving on to something else now. That's good.
Yeah, it's weird that you didn't answer his question. I thought it was a pretty easy question.
It's like I'm trying to talk about something that is common to all 3 of us. That's why I'm talking about dreams.
Is it a common experience, or is it something that any of the 3 of us have actually studied in a real sense and have real training in?
There is no training required to talk about dreams. Like, we all experience the dreams where we feel that everything is real and the dream.
Right, but there is training necessary to talk about what dreams fundamentally actually are and where they come from and whether or not they mean anything spiritual. Like, that is something that you should have some training in. And I've studied quite a bit of neurobiology, but I've never studied dream states.
I'm talking about the dream world, the idea is we sleep every night. Sometimes when we dream, we feel that it seems real, right? But ultimately, when you wake up, you see that it was just a manifestation of your mind, where you, in the dream, including the dream, was just your mental product. So you were in that dream, and that you are aware of that dream, and then there is a dream world also. But all 3 are just manifestations of your dream, of you, basically, of your mind. As per this analogy, the idea is this, that the physical world that we see, essentially.
Hindu, I don't think this conversation is going anywhere, and we've got time for just one more guest. And no amount of like talk about the immaterial reality of dreams is going to get you to the finish line. But we appreciate you coming up and having a chat with us. It's definitely intriguing to hear people from different religions talk about their religion. At least it's interesting to me, so I appreciate that. But we've got to move on to our last caller. Okay.
No worries. Bye. Take care.
Cheers.
Take care. I wonder what he believes about dementia. You know, my grandma died with dementia and lost her mind slowly over the course of years as she did. So I wonder, like, did just part of the fundamental of reality leave her from piece to piece? Was her receptor breaking? Was like, how do you square that circle? And you're talking about stuff like that. I don't know. It's rough.
Yeah, that is a tough one. We're going to bring in Robin, and Robin looks like an atheist, but has, I think, an interesting question. Robin says, caller's family claims that the spark of life at conception is visible and proof of a soul.
That's news to me.
Yeah. So Forrest probably has a lot to say about this, but before we get started, Robin, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you for waiting for so long. You've been online for an hour and 42 minutes. Jesus.
Yeah, big W.
It's okay. I've been doing Sudoku.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
So, Robin, I'm familiar with the claim that you're referring to, the spark of life claim, because it made huge news in like Christian circles. And as far as I can tell, there's two problems. One is the first study, the original study, was on mice, which means if it's some sort of sign of a soul, like entering at inception, then it's weird that mice have souls the same way humans do. But the real problem is just that they don't understand the study. So what they did for the study is they're doing a chemical analysis of what happens when the egg gets fertilized. And in order to do that, they need to bombard it with how do we call it? Like flora. What's the word I'm looking for, Forrest? There's a type of optical device where you bombard something with fluorescence so that you can detect particular chemicals that are only detectable when they're under heavy fluorescence lights. I forget the name of the device.
Sounds familiar, but I don't know.
There's a name for it. A very scientific, long-sounding name for it. But basically, what they did is they use a device that bombards the fertilized egg with fluorescence, and then the fluorescence allows them to see particular chemicals that you wouldn't normally be able to see. Right? In this particular case, it just detected zinc. It turns out that when an egg gets fertilized by a sperm, there's a zinc reaction, and zinc just happens to be visible under a heavy amount of fluorescence, right? And that's all that is, right? But the way that Christians were like spinning the study was that like under no outside influence, right? Whenever if you had a microscope and you just looked at a sperm fertilizing an egg, you would just see light being emitted. But that's not the case, actually. What happens is the light bounces, the light reflects off of zinc rather than being absorbed, so it shows up like a spark of light when you observe it, right? Anyways, that's my understanding of the study and my understanding of what Christians are getting wrong about the study. But like the article is available for the original. It's on PubMed. The name of the article is Zinc Sparks Are Triggered by Fertilization and Facilitate Cell Cycle Resumption in Mammalian Eggs. And this was the 2011 study on mice, and it talks about how they did it, what instruments they did, and what the results were.
I have another study here. This one is from Scientific Reports from Nature Research. The fertilization-induced zinc spark is a novel biomarker of mouse embryo quality and early development. Just reading a bit from the abstract here. Upon activation, mammalian eggs release billions of zinc ions in an exocytotic event, that means coming out of the cell, termed the zinc spark. The zinc spark is dependent on and occurs coordinately with intercellular calcium transients, which are tightly associated with embryonic development. Thus, we hypothesize the zinc spark represents an early extracellular physiochemical marker and the developmental potential of the zygote. To test this hypothesis, we monitored the exocytosis, blah, 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 blah. And they say, let me see here. I'm seeing if they actually put a conclusion here. Zinc sparks can thus serve as an early biomarker of zygote quality. So the idea in this thing is that these biomarkers are present and they kind of show that maybe this particular embryo will survive. And that's maybe what somebody wants to try to stretch to. I don't know. But yeah, I think you summarized it pretty well, though. It was a study in mice that was the big discovery where they found that there was this little flash of zinc. And if you want to understand what that is, if you ever hit a flint and steel to make a spark, it's the exact same thing. What you're doing when you hit flint and steel together, you're not actually knocking bits of the flint off, you're knocking tiny, tiny atoms of steel off. You're knocking little bits of that steel. And when the steel is now oxidized, this bit of raw steel comes into contact with the air, oxygen binds to it, that creates a spark. It's an exothermic reaction. And so that's what we're seeing. We have little bits of zinc out, and that is now causing a little spark for whatever reason it is. I don't know if it's oxidation or not, but it's the same basic concept. It's just this release of a metal that is now doing a thing that's emitting a tiny bit of light in these particular conditions. I don't know if that's all the time or just when they're using whatever magical zinc ray they were using in that particular setup.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense than what they were telling me. See, my aunt and uncle, they both breed horses, and ever since figuring out that I'm atheist, they've been trying to feed me little facts to convert back to Christianity, and that was one of the things they were claiming, that while breeding horses, that they themselves can see this spark of light, and that's evidence of a soul. And if they could see horses, and they can see souls in us, and like, yeah, I was just really confused and I didn't know what to say. And that was like the first time they've ever stumped me. So they got their one gotcha moment in the past like 10 years that I've been atheist.
Yeah. Well,
even if this was something that was somehow like, first of all, no, this is not a visible thing outside of the horse. Like, you're not going to see that. That doesn't make any sense. But like, even if there was a consistent, persistent, every time an egg is fertilized, there's this marvelous flash of light, and we don't know where it comes from. The idea that you would then build the bridge to this is magic is pretty wild. There's so many implications. And number one, I just learned that horses have souls. That's neat. Number two, what about things that don't reproduce this way? What about asexual organisms? Are you telling me that, something that does cell division, just goes through that, doesn't have a soul because it doesn't have a fertilization point? Is there not a spark of light there? Like, what's going on? What about other things that cause sparks of light? What makes this spark of light different than that spark of light? Like, it's just like question begging. That's not really the right term. It's just a massive assumption. It's taking something you don't understand and assuming that it's some big crazy thing, when in reality it's remarkably mundane. It's just a neat thing that happens that we didn't know before. And it is what is usual, is creationists take a neat thing that we didn't know before and try like hell to cram that into their dogma.
Yeah, pretty much. We got as far as to going to, they said that, well, basically only animals that conceive this way have souls. And then I was like, well, what do you define as a soul? Because I get a different answer from everyone. The most intriguing answer I ever got was from my pagan roommate, but all my Christian family members just say that, like, pretty much that their soul is a consciousness.
Well, then there you go. Is that tells us that, number one, if all animals that conceive this way have souls, then the only thing we have proven thus far is that mice have souls. So I hope that these people take away all their mouse traps, because those are souls that they're hurting, especially the sticky ones. Those are just inhumane. That for what the fuck are the implications of that? Second of all, if this is what we're saying, that souls are linked to consciousness, way more animals than just mice got that going on. Let me tell you, we have evidence of consciousness in tons of things that you don't want to have souls or to deal with the ethical implications of having souls. It's no for a lot of reasons.
No, for a lot of reasons. Yes.
So I'll say one last thing. The when you're searching for this on the internet, because you're going to want to find this on the internet most likely to talk to your family, the process, which I couldn't pronounce, is called fluorescent microscopy, which is an absolute mouthful.
No, I didn't know that's what you're talking. That's all it is. Okay, yeah, we use that all the time for a bunch of stuff. Okay, cool. Yeah, neat.
As I figured you knew what it was.
Like, I didn't know that's what we were talking. You were describing fluorescence. I'm like, and you're like, you just this device that like sees these things. It all makes sense now. You explained it perfectly, and I'm incredibly stupid. That's all.
No, you're okay. So that's all there was. If you want to look it up, those are the buzzwords you need to look it up.
Okay, thank you. That'll lead me down where I need to go.
And thank you. Good to hear from you, Robin.
Take care.
Good to hear from you too.
Cheers.
Y'all have a good day.
W. Robin, that didn't take as long as I thought it would. We got time for another one if you want to take Atheist from Kansas.
Let's do it. Let's power through one more.
All right, let's grab Atheist from Kansas. We've got Chris in the queue, asking, are Old Testament prophecies circular reasoning? Now remember, you're talking to two atheists, which means we're probably going to agree with that statement in some fashion. Can you put some more to it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am reading through a handful of books looking for a consistent hermeneutic that would be able to falsify the claim that Jesus fulfills prophecies. So I've been studying some of my old seminary textbooks, actually. And so I just finished one today. And so I'm talking about Isaiah 7. The Emmanuel verse and the whole born of a virgin, and then Matthew claims it. So it appears to me that Matthew claims this as a prophecy. There's nothing in the original text contextually, and we always talk about how context is important. This author in this textbook says that earlier in the book. But there is no context to make that a prophecy. So Jesus is the Messiah and God and Savior because he fulfills prophecies, but the prophecies are prophecies because we say they're prophecies. Therefore, it's true.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris, you've quoted me exactly. I've said those exact words before.
Oh, okay.
So, to be sure, this is the circular part of this prophecies about Jesus part, right? Which is, we know contextually speaking that this prophecy was to King Ahaz about a child born during the reign of King Ahaz. And before that child is old enough to know right from wrong, the two kings that are attacking the kingdom of Judah, they're going to be laid waste by the Assyrians, right? So in order to make this about Jesus, you have to add a new second layer of meaning to it. You're saying, well, originally it was referring to this, but secondarily it was referring to this. But the minute you add a secondary interpretation, it becomes circular, right? Because who gets to decide what the secondary meaning is, and who gets to decide which prophecies get 2 meanings or 3 meanings or 4 meanings, right? So then what the Christian will do is they'll say, well, Jesus is the Messiah because he fulfilled all these prophecies. And when you read the prophecies, not a single one of them refer to Jesus in the original context. They all require secondary meanings or some type of not dual fulfillment, partial fulfillment or some nonsense like that. So then you would ask the Christian, well, why would I accept these as being prophecies about Jesus because they're not in the original context? And they would say, well, because Jesus was the Messiah. And now you've got an entire circle, right? These prophecies that aren't prophecies about Jesus, Are there prophecies because the Messiah said so? Why is he a prophecy? Because he fulfilled these prophecies. Or why is he the Messiah? Because he fulfilled the prophecies about the Messiah. So I think you've nailed it, Chris. It's entirely a circular argument.
Okay.
I mentioned that earlier on in the show and did a much worse job.
I'm sure it was great.
That's why you were gone.
So
Yeah.
in the interest of giving good content, can I try to prop this up and fight you on it and see if you can help me knock down? So here are the potential explanations that the author gives for why Isaiah 7:14 could legitimately be interpreted this way. The first one is that it's wrong, which obviously he's going to say that's not a valid claim. The second one is that the Holy Spirit kind of slipped this in, and most Christians will talk about a dual authorship, right? And however you want to define that, God helping humans or the cooperating or dictation or whatever. So couldn't you say, okay, well, within God's divine authorship, there is an authorial intent pointing towards a Messiah figure?
Right. And I think the problem with that type of a hermeneutic is now you're still starting with the conclusion. The conclusion is that the Holy Spirit has hidden something within these prophecies that you wouldn't know just by reading them. So now God is being deceptive. And in Deuteronomy 18, God tells you that you can determine if a prophecy is coming from God and whether or not you need to kill or not kill that prophet by determining if, in fact, the words of the prophets come true, right? Which means at some point you have to know that the prophecy is being spoken as a prophecy. It can't be some secret that people hundreds and hundreds of years later would just stumble upon and be like, oh, interesting, that sounds like something else. It must be a prophecy, right? That doesn't seem to line up with the God of the Old Testament. Nobody, like no reasonable Jewish person would accept that as an interpretation for these prophecies. The only people that would accept that are people who already are at the conclusion that Jesus must be the Messiah. Then you work yourself backwards. It's a sharpshooter fallacy.
I wish I could fight you more on this, man, but like I can't argue. I can't find ways to poke hole in your arguments. It's so frustrating. Man.
Let me show you one thing. I got a copy of the Dead Sea Scrolls in English, and they do something really interesting in the Dead Sea Scrolls where like a number of the prophecies of the Old Testament don't really kind of come true, or they come true, but like not all the way. And so what they do is they just go in and they reinterpret them, right? And hopefully this, the secondary interpretation doesn't fail, right? So if you go to like this is the Habakkuk Pesher. Pesher is a Hebrew word for like a reteaching or an interpretation. So in the Habakkuk Pesher, we've got a line from Habakkuk 1. It says, "For I am now about to raise up the Chaldeans, that reckless people." Well, we know who the Chaldeans are. The Chaldeans are, in fact, the Babylonians, right? But since this prophecy didn't have any impact on what was happening at the time of the Dead Sea, they added their own layer of meaning. They said, "This refers to the Kittim, who are swift and mighty in war, annihilating many people." And then they give a whole interpretation of this completely disconnected from the context. And of course, the prophecy failed because the secondary interpretation proved to not be true as well, right? The only difference between what they were doing at the Dead Sea and what the Christians were doing is at the Dead Sea, they were reinterpreting the prophecies and still giving some sort of future prediction with it. And we can see that the future predictions fail. The Christians didn't do that. The Christians took the story of Jesus, didn't make any predictions about the future until you get like to the book of Revelation and his second coming, and then retrofitted it to alternative meanings from the prophets, which is why it could stick long enough, right? Because the part that didn't come true is the part that he's going to come back, and people are willing to just wait forever. And if that's the only part that you predicted, that he's going to come back and do a bunch of stuff, people will wait on that all the time. We've seen all kinds of religious cults that wait forever and ever on some kind of a coming of something that are never going to be coming. But that's where the reinterpretation by the Christians fail, because the Christian interpretation of these prophecies based on Jesus' own teaching and Paul's teaching was that Jesus' second coming, the ultimate fulfillment of all of the final prophecies, was going to happen within the generation of the people still living, as we see in Matthew 16, 27, 28, Matthew 24, Matthew 10, 23, and elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll keep digging, man. Maybe I'll pop on your show sometime and ask some follow-ups. I know we're towards the end of the show. I did have a question for Forrest about trans issues. We got time for a couple. If not, I'll call in another time.
We can make it super fast, and then I'll try. What's your question?
Okay. Yeah. So is gender? Would you say gender is rooted in sex, or are they?
I would say that it's
or like, how would you connect them?
I would say that it's associated with sex, but fundamentally different things.
Okay. It's very strange as a Christian to. I mean, we're all against trans issues because we're religious. Like, that's how this works, right?
Yeah.
And so to potentially cast aside the religious piece, I am left with the question of, do I even care about this stuff, or even thinking through it? Yeah, it's interesting.
I would say if I were you, if I was in your position, I was coming from a Christian framework, and I look at sex and gender, and I look at trans people, and I say, okay, well, this doesn't line up with the Bible, where the Bible clearly says that God made man and woman, and only man and woman, and in this verse it says He made them at the same time, and in this verse it said make them totally different. But it doesn't matter because it's only man and women, right? Blah 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 blah. I would treat that the same way that you would treat the fact that the Bible also gets the origin of the earth wrong. It gets the origin of life wrong. It gets concepts of evolution wrong. It says that snakes can talk. It says that donkeys can talk. It says that sometimes trees can talk. It says all these different things about like just batshit. It says that grasshoppers have 4 legs. It says that bats are birds. It says that it says that pi is equal to 3. So the Bible's wrong about a lot of shit in science, right? And so you now can decide as a Christian, do you do what what the Catholics do and say, okay, the Bible is a book of regional stories that teach moral lessons, and the only one that's true for fucking sure is this whole thing about Jesus, and even that we need to really study and interpret and make sense of it? Or do you do what the Baptist-Costal folks do and say, no, every single word of this is absolutely actually true, and now I have not just one thing that I don't understand, but just a shitload of things that I don't understand? Or you can do what I think is the best thing, which is to really analyze whether or not there's evidence or reason to believe in any of this stuff, and then decide, all right, hey, there is very clearly actual scientific backing for our understanding of sex and gender. And this is not a new idea. This idea is 100 years old, and is just like other useful models, is being proven right over and over and over. And on the other side, I've got this Bronze Age sex and slavery manual that says that sometimes donkeys can speak Hebrew. Maybe I need to take a step back and decide whether or not it's actually important, whether or not the things that I believe are true. And if it isn't, then I can just stop complaining about any of this, because I can just decide to believe whatever I want to believe. But if it is important to me that the things that I believe are actually true, then maybe I can put down this Bible and start focusing on reality a bit more. That's what I would say in this situation.
When you talk about gender being on a spectrum, is that spectrum from masculine presenting to feminine presenting? Does the animalistic identify as a cat? And I'm not trying to be inflammatory. I just, again, I lumped this all in a box and I threw it out the window and didn't think about it. So when you talk about the spectrum from a scientific perspective, are we only talking about masculine to feminine, or do you include all that other stuff too? Scientific. So
when you say, just to be clear, it does include other stuff. All that other stuff is not cat and things. So the conflation of being trans with thinking that you're a cat or a dog or whatever like that, it is the same kind of just bullshit as when we were talking about homosexuality a decade ago, and Christians were saying, well, if you can fuck a man, why don't you fuck a horse? And it's equating homosexuality to bestiality. It's not really part of the conversation for people who take this seriously. It is just a straw man.
Okay.
When we talk about the spectrum of gender, what we're talking about is the fact that gender is definitionally a social construct. Therefore, by definition, because it is something that is socially constructed, and because it is something that we can demonstrate factually, changes from culture to culture, from person to person, from generation to generation, from day to day, because of that, it is definitionally spectral. It cannot have hard, set, fast, serious limits with necessary conditions for each of these individual boxes if it is something that is socially constructed in this way, and something that we see is very dynamic and fluid across cultural contexts. And so that's what we're talking about. We're not just saying here's this masculine and feminine side, because even the concepts of masculinity and femininity are themselves socially constructed and therefore are also fluid and spectral. This is a diverse rainbow of different presentations. A great way to think about it, when you think spectrum, you may think of like a color spectrum, right? Where it goes from red to blue, say. Don't think about that as a linear spectrum. Think about one of those when you pick a color on like in Microsoft Paint or something, and it gives you the circle and it has all the rainbow all over that whole circle, and you get a multi-dimensional thing where it's not just a straight line. Think about it that way. Yep. You have a lot of different ways that you can interpret this this whole concept of gender. It's a wide range of different things with lots of different factors going into it. It's not just two poles and you find your place somewhere in between it.
Sure. Would you say that the experience of gender all the way along that spectrum is fundamentally rooted in our brain activity and our brain waves? And so just as on the topic of sex, you can have a variety of conditions that go with, you know, phenotypically and genetically XY, phenotypically, genetically XX, and then all the other stuff in the middle. That gender then is an experience of the brain, and then that experience is, again, is just rooted in that same kind of materialism or like physiology.
I mean, fundamentally, yes, everything you experience is rooted in materialism and physiology. So that is not unique to gender. In terms of like where gender comes from, if that is purely neurological, or if that is purely neurobiological or purely neurochemical or purely psychological, I'm not sure. There is evidence for a neurobiological component to it, but it's kind of like sexuality in this way, where it's like, yeah, we have evidence for this and this component, but fundamentally we're still learning a lot about where it comes from and what it does and how it behaves. All we know is that it is a thing that we experience, and it is not binary. Those are the things that we know. Just like I think, you know, being trans and being homosexual or whatever, like these are different concepts, but like you can use sexuality as an analog for gender in this way, in the exact same way that sexuality is a massive and diverse spectrum, and it is really, really because it is so deeply personal, it is very difficult to really nail down any one label for someone's individual sexuality that can then be easily applied to even one other person, let alone scores of other people. Same thing really goes for gender. You and I can say that I'm a cis man. I mean, you probably are too, I'm assuming. But I guarantee, even though we are both men, right? Even though we are both of this masculine gender and this masculine presentation, I'll say fundamental different ideas, I guarantee, about what it means to be a man and what that actually looks like and feels like and acts like and how that should be presented to the world. So that's what I would encourage you. If you want to learn about gender, start by exploring your own. Sit down and really analyze. Ask for yourself, what do I mean when I say that I'm a man? What do I mean when I talk about, like when I talk about my masculinity? What actually challenges my masculinity, if anything? What makes me feel more like a man or less like a man, if that's even possible? Read up on, there's a lot of really good psychological research about how masculinity specifically is precarious and needs to be maintained through performance in our culture. Read up on some of that. Think about some of that. Wonder why so many big, buff, manly dudes get really, really scared of fingernail polish and shit. And like the idea that they might be caught in a dress someday. Like, What does that actually mean? And do you agree with these things? And do you feel the same way? And when you sit down to actually study your own gender, you might have a better time looking at other people then and saying, okay, so they just differ from me in these concepts, in these and I differ from many other cisgender men in these concepts. We live in a bizarrely heteronormative society, and a lot of people don't take the time to explore their own gender and their own sexuality. If you do, I think it would elucidate a lot of these things about what gender is and how it operates. And then you can start applying that model to other people as well and start learning a little bit about them.
Well, even when I was more deeply rooted in the fundamentalist evangelical world, I still kind of had these quiet thoughts of, you know, I had to keep the binary because that's what my book says. But I always had this thought of like, you just have effeminate men and more masculine women. And like the boxes around those two things are just bigger than we pretend they are. Like you can just have dudes that fit, you know.
And isn't it funny that the same hateful assholes who will tell you you're not a real man because you're gay or because you like to paint your fingernails or because you listen to certain music or drink a fruity cocktail are the same assholes who will then tell a trans woman that you can never change the fact that you're a man because you'll always be a man forever. It's just, it makes no sense. It never has made any sense. It never will make any sense. It's just the dying gasps of an outdated sexist ideology. And just like every other time when we talked about sexuality, it was the same thing. When we talked about, you know, race, it was the same thing. Who's a real human? When we talked about civilization, it was the same thing. It's just people in power, people who have control, people who have authority, who want everything to fit into their boxes because differences are scary, and challenge their authority. Because if there are different ways to be a human, then they can't control the narrative anymore. So that's where I would take that. But with that, we are now half an hour overtime, and I've got another show after this, so I've got to get out of here.
Sounds good.
Chris, thanks so much for calling and talking with us.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you both.
Cheers, friends.
Bye-bye.
Sounds like Chris is doing some deep thinking on these topics, and I'm certainly glad that he is. It sounds like he's in deconstruction territory.
Yeah, it's awesome. And like, that's the cool thing about this stuff is that like, there really just is so much to learn. And especially with gender, like I said, the concept that sex and gender are different things and that neither one is a strict binary and all this. This is like a century old. This is old news, but it's still fresh, steaming hot pile of delicious information that like we're still learning a lot of stuff about. There's a ton of questions. We have way more questions than we have answers. And this is an active field of research that is yielding better understandings, more complex, more sophisticated pictures, better models of what the natural world actually is and what our place is in that natural world. And so like, yeah, there's a lot of questions here. And they're great questions. And the best researchers in the world on these topics also have a lot of questions about it. That's what makes it so exciting. So go out and dig into it and don't be afraid of it and treat it. I would say if you're deconstructing on this, treat it the same way you treat something like evolution. Yes, I understand. I've been lied to about this for a long time. And I understand this is something that I was taught to ignore because my book says to ignore it. Awesome. Now I'm in a position where I get to learn a lot of cool shit. How lucky am I? I'm going to go work on learning now. That's great.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I think we got 3 super chats and then we're going to close out.
All right.
Our first super chat from LOS for 499. I have to give a disclaimer. This is not an advert for Jet 2 holidays, but our friend Lo says nothing beats a Jet 2 holiday. And this is apparently an inside joke for YouTube. Apparently, this is the new advert that is in everybody's ear whenever our live streams start. And so now if you're watching this stream, chances are you've heard that advert today, and congratulations.
It's an ad. It's a joke. It's a meme on TikTok, especially. I don't know if it's on YouTube, but especially on TikTok, it's a big thing where like if you have travel footage that's just freaking horrible, just anything breaking and going horribly wrong, nothing beats a Jet 2 holiday is like the thing to put over it. So I love every time anything goes wrong, nothing beats a Jet 2 holiday. Sign up now for something off from that's 30 pounds for a family of 4. Evan Rock sent $1.99. Couldn't afford the extra penny, you cheap bastard. For magic sperm equals Jesus. I'm saved. JK, hail Doug.
Fantastic. And last one from our friend Patch Grabber. Thank you for the $10 Canuck Buck. Says, hey, Justin and Forrest, I love all your stuff. Forrest, if you add up all the bad arguments for God you've heard, could you convert that into your first bad day? May the courts be with you both.
Nah, it's all about perspective. And what a wonderful day I've had suffering through all of this shit so I can try to make people think a little bit more rationally. How lucky am I?
Making the world a better place. Just sleep easy knowing you're making the world a better place.
Oh, man, totally. That's what this is all about. I get to sit here and be an asshole on the internet because it's making the world better. That's what it is.
Well, first, I had a blast. I know you've got another commitment to get to, so we're going to close out the show. Our backup, we went longer than our backup could even go. Our backup had to cut out. Yeah. Thank you so much, Richard, for being here because it turned out we needed you, Richard.
Richard got to come in and he got to come in and ask one question. He sat here for 2 hours so he could ask one question to somebody who didn't want to listen.
And then the poor guy leaves and we can't even pronounce his name correctly. Well, I'll do my penance later. Thank you so much, Richard, for being here. Thank you, Forrest, and thank you, crew. We'll see you again next week. Same time, same place, 5:30 Eastern Time, 4:30 Central Time.
Bye.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your life.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.